Hi, everyone. Today's July 11th, 2023, BG&T meeting. First item on our agenda is the TV studio broadcast server. Mr. Tag?
Yes, so give everybody a little history on that. When we moved from the old high school into the new high school, the TV studio had been set up across the street. It was at a time in the industry when TV production and broadcast was going to digital. So at that time, rather than move that equipment over here, they upgraded the program and went to a digital setup over here. So when the high school opened about 12 years ago, all that equipment is brand new. Component of that is the broadcast server, which allows us to broadcast. Tonight, Mr. Boris Laddick, who handles the TV program for the high school, was kind enough to join us and speak to the technical nature of it, needs, desires, and what direction the board wants to take this in. So Boris.
Good evening, everybody. Just to add on what you just gave the introduction to. So to explain, the broadcast server is basically a specialized computer, if you will, which allows us to play out video content on our local Monroe cable channels. We currently have one channel provided to us by Comcast and two channels provided to us by Verizon Fios. In order to be on those channels, that kind of device is necessary, right? It's a computer, but it's more than that. It's a very specialized, complicated processor, lots of storage, scheduling, a very specialized piece of equipment. We've had a broadcast server actually since there was a franchise renewal with Comcast back in 2008 or 2009 even. And part of that franchise renewal with Comcast included funds to purchase the original broadcast server, which we've been using until about mid-May this year, when it finally met its maker. It went into the digital, afterlife. So, and it was beyond warranty, beyond service life, whatever you want to call it. So ever since then, our cable channels, which we share, by the way, with the township of Monroe, have been dark. So in order to be on those cable channels, that server would have to be replaced with a new one. I've been, ever since the current, the old server broke, I've been contacting manufacturers, and I was able to procure two proposals from two different manufacturers that are comparable with each other. We are talking about, for the initial hardware expense, we're talking something in the area of $33,000 to $35,000. And then there are also some revolving annual costs regarding media, online media storage, live streaming, tech support, things of that nature, which add on a couple more $1,000s of annual revolving cost, which, by the way, up to this point, with the old server, we've also had a revolving annual cost regarding our streaming, our programming, the board meetings, whatever we put up there. And, but that's a cost that's been shared with the township, and we split that down the middle with them. So that's basically my introductory spiel. I'm really not able to make a specific recommendation yet which of the two manufacturers we should prefer. I'm still doing some comparing and contrasting, but ultimately it comes out to approximately, same cost, both annually and the initial expense. What the one item might be, the initial expense might be a little less, but then one of their annual services is a little bit more, so. Right.
What will be broadcasting other than the board meetings on it? Is it like sports or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, board and committee meetings, obviously. So we record some of the high school sporting events. We put that on there. All the music events at all the schools are broadcast on those channels and online. Other graduation,
The township was using it also for their meetings, any additional
Yes.
content other than.
yeah,
just
they put their council meetings up and they also produce some of their own programming. They're not as prolific as we are, but they do, send us
the
content.
mayors and the-
Yeah, different variety of things.
So I have a question. So we share the expense of the, accessories, basically, features that this thing has. We share that with the township. I would assume that the township's equipment is just as antiquated as our equipment now, if they're broadcasting on those servers as well, correct?
There is no township and school district equipment.
So we have
There
only
is-
one
there's
set that
broadcast server,
we and the township share.
correct.
Okay, so did we contact the township and see if they're willing to update half the cost of this with us?
I have provided all the documentation that I have to both the school district and people at the township.
Mhm.
And I said, but at that point, I'm not privy to those negotiations between
Okay, so
the two entities.
who is privy to that communication? Would it be you, Tate?
Is the channel completely dark?
For all intents and purposes, I was able to rig up an old laptop and connect it to one of the channels, to the Comcast channel, just to have and that's just a PowerPoint slideshow with some slides that the township provided to us that they wanted to put on there.
So in the I'm sorry, I'm cutting you.
Go ahead.
For the most part, it is dark, because I even called you and said, how come I don't see our meeting?
And I had heard pro news that we were
Right.
preventing the broadcast
So-
because we
so-
were trying to hide our meetings.
Our next move here, I think, should
But
be
the
to,
township meetings aren't being broadcast?
Nothing is currently on local cable.
Okay,
It's
So
only
that's
on our
important.
video on demand portal.
okay.
that's important, because a lot of our seniors who can't make it here, they need to see what's going on in this building and in the township building. So I think whoever needs to contact the township, I guess it would be our board president.
Well, we should add this to the list.
Well, for
probably.
this, but even, I mean, in a more,
It needs to be addressed right away, because
Right away,
a lot of our
I mean, if-
taxpayers need to see these meetings.
if we're providing the services to get their stuff on,
Right.
they should be, I mean,
Right.
it's their content as well. I would assume that they.
Right, and like you said, like, we shared the costs, so, but what he's saying is that nobody contacted the township to see if they're willing to pay like they did before, half the cost. So we need to get that done, so we can get this equipment purchased. I mean, if this is the only way our taxpayers are gonna see our meetings, besides coming here, I think it's
No, I
very
think
important.
Yeah.
Mr. Lennox said they are available on the website.
Yes, they are available
My
on.
question is really.
But a lot of
what
seniors
is the
don't have.
viewership On those channels, why would can we get some data as to who's really watching those channels? Because for most part, people are using our website and YouTube. So the township council meetings are telecasted on YouTube. Everybody's watching it on YouTube. We put our meetings on our website and they are, telecast live on WebEx. So who is the audience on the cable channel that we need to think about at this point? Why would we invest $35,000 if there is no viewership on the cable channel? So how do we find out?
Well, in the best case scenario, hopefully we'd be investing half of that.
Yeah, I would ask the town to invest all of it, given the budgetary constraints we have right now, if this is a shared service. We could start that conversation there because
We need to reach out to the township is what we need to do.
we could, but
It's okay.
I would want to know that, Mr. Flaherty, is there like a cloud, is this like a physical server that we need to have in our facility? The server that we're talking about?
Yes,
So there is no cloud solution to it? Because we are definitely storing all these videos somewhere already to put it out on our
And
website.
is there any
yeah, I mean,
data?
but basically, there's a separation between the physical server, which plays out to the cable
Cable,
channel,
so it's just for
and
cable.
the cloud. I mean, they're integrated, but they're different parts of one.
So we're not right now limited with how we are storing our videos and making it accessible to the public,
On the web, no.
not at all. But on the cable channel, we're completely dark right now, have been
correct.
since May, and so has the town.
Mr. Morale, you had a question?
Yeah, I just, so for the public's sake, they are able to get our content now via the YouTube channel, correct? So we would
It's-
just need
It's not
to,
YouTube, but yeah,
Well,
something, video on demand.
video on demand. Is there anything that we can do on the broadcast server that we cannot do using our other digital methods of broadcasting, YouTube Live, whatever? So like, in 2023, is there something that the cable channel can do that we cannot do digitally without the broadcast server?
Well, I mean, there are, features, ever since, our old broadcast server was lacking certain features that newer models now have. There are things like, they now offer, apps for the Roku and for, Amazon Fire Stick that can be, which those are optional things that you kind of added on. Mobile apps that would be included. We can, with the server, you can live stream to the server, which then can go live out via cable. But, so there's a lot of details like that, but the long and short of it is, yeah, does the school district, if we want to be on local cable, we need to have the server.
So when you just said that you can be on streaming devices through it too, that definitely changes the conversation because everybody is on Amazon or Roku or Fire or whatever the streaming, devices they're using. So, but that replaces cable. But
But
again,
if
do we need?
have it on the internet already, do we
Yeah, do we
have it
need
on a
it?
streaming service?
If it was free, it would be great,
If
but
it's free, yeah, exactly.
we have to pay, we're not in a position, I don't think. But the township, at this kind of cost, the township might be willing to just buy the equipment and be done with it. Just run that up
So
a
we
black
need
hole.
to have some
Yeah, I think
contact
that
with
goes
township.
Yeah.
And who are we gonna assign that task?
I don't know, who would that be? Would it be
Ms. Allen?
Laura, or the business office?
In the past, it's always the superintendent has led at least the initial olive branch discussion.
Okay, so we'll send her an email, I guess. Okay, anybody have any other questions? All right, second item on the agenda.
George, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paving at Barking Brook for Township Recreation Department. I want to make a clarification. This was not requested by the Township Recreation Department. I am the Rec Advisory Liaison for the Board of Ed, and at a meeting, someone brought it to my attention that at this storage container, there was a rough spot. Am I correct? Or it's deteriorating? I'll let you explain the details, but I wanted to bring it to this committee so that we can hear the details and see if it needs to be corrected or if it's something that we don't need to correct. So I just wanted, I wanted to be clear that the Recreation Department did not request to me that this be addressed. They just brought it to my attention.
So
Go ahead.
the table tennis club, under the umbrella of the rec department, utilizes Barkley Brook. Several years ago, they asked permission to put sea boxes on the site, which you see in the photo there, where they store the tables because we don't have room in the school. And when they come, they have to pull their tables out of the sea boxes and wheel them into the school across paved surface. I think the paved surface is not our top priority of paved surfaces in the district. There are other areas that are much more deteriorated. I actually think it's pretty decent.
Okay, so I need to do. So this is a non-issue for us, this district, as far as you're concerned.
If you were to ask me to prioritize areas that require paving, in this past year, I had over $1 million in there from paving that had to be cut. Much higher priority areas
Okay.
than.
Anyone have any questions?
I can't even see what.
Is it broken and they need it paved, or what is it that
Doesn't
they
look like
want?
anything in there.
It's just not the most smooth paving. There's an occasional little
Ah.
fissure and
I wish
I guess the table.
I'm sure they're
rolls
rolling.
dealt with it and
we have a roof and HVAC systems to think about, unfortunately.
Priorities, priorities. Okay, third item on the agenda is the office space planning for special services.
So this is an idea we were kicking around. As you know, the board agreed to extend the lease at Monroe Commons for special services for this year. We're moving out several of the staff members from that location back into the schools. So there may be an opportunity to sublease one of the suites that we have. We're waiting for legal counsel to give some advisement on that. But looking ahead to next year, as the committee may recall, the new landlord proposed rates for next year with a substantial increase. So where we're going to put the group from Monroe Commons, which would be down to Marietta and her secretary, and I believe 4 other people on the other side. So that's 6 people.
And all their stuff.
So the idea we had is the golf range site that we now own has the original clubhouse. It's an empty building sitting there. It has a garage, which would be ideal for all of their long-term storage of file cabinets. And the interior of the space could be updated for their use at modest cost, and it can be done primarily through maintenance and so on. So we wanted to toss that out there, it'd be a way to eliminate the lease, it'd be a way to kind of plant our flag on that property and make sure we have a presence out there. We could also start to use that parking lot for bus storage, where bus storage is an issue for us. So if it's something that the committee wants to consider, we could use the architect of record to go in, meet with Marietta first, see what little revisions she needs made there, and look at
Do we
some
have a rough cost of what that renovation would cost us?
Not at this time, but we're talking very modest now, because again, the maintenance staff could take care of the vast majority of it.
Okay, so there's no huge construction, maybe a couple of walls, some
They
plumbing.
might want a little kitchenette unit put in there. There's a toilet room in there, which, you know, needs to be updated. The old carpeting probably taken out. The place was vandalized, as I reported previously. They smashed the windows in the place, so.
So not to hold you to an exact number, but that renovation, we could assume is gonna be cheaper than another year of the
Oh,
lease.
absolutely.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
okay.
What's the lease currently, do you know?
Close to 70,000 a year.
And about to increase by like 50 to 60%.
Yeah, it's gonna double.
The next year.
Yeah, right, that's current year. So
Okay.
I would think just, and again, just grabbing a number in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, you could probably spruce that place up, get Marietta and the group in there, and then it's just free use from that point on.
And we don't need any permits, any permission.
Yeah.
We could move in tomorrow.
Well, you have to update the place first. I mean,
Yeah,
consider-
after we update, but like, as in, do we need to do inspections there, or, you know, ask
Yes.
anybody for permissions to?
Yes,
start
because
parking
again, the
buses
architect would
there?
go through, Marietta might say, I need a little private office here, or
Yeah.
kitchen, that type of thing. We'll do
Yeah,
local
we-
permits.
All internal.
Well, you gotta get permits, yeah. Well, we own the property.
Should have worked, yes. No, but what I mean was that property was given to us by the town.
Mhm.
We,
Our property.
we can start using it, you know,
Yes,
Now,
right away. We don't need any other permissions from the town or any
no,
other
we own it.
entity.
just a certificate of occupancy after we
Right.
do renovations to make
Sure,
sure.
of course, the work would need the permits and all, but what I meant was to start using the property, we don't need.
Yeah, it's not an educational site, so it does not require DOT approval, the long range facilities plans, all those kind of bureaucratic things that take an immense amount of time.
So we could have already been using that for the buses. I was just thinking like that we could be using it for the buses.
There was something Ken brought up for, since the referendum failed. He said make it bus depot.
Great idea.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
all for finding out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Adam and I have talked to Ms. Shanley, she's very supportive of it too, so if you want, we just bring in the architect of record, have him meet with Marietta at the site, and see what's viable, and kind of come back to you with some just rough schematics, and then we can get some numbers at that point. But again, it's something I think we could comfortably handle during this year with our own staff, limiting the cost.
All right, that's great. I mean, anybody have any questions on that one?
Sounds like a good session.
All right, number 4 on the agenda is the ESIP options for HVAC projects.
Yes, so this is something I've been exploring for the board to consider. ESIP, Energy Savings Improvement Program. It is a program approved by the state that essentially, they recognize the value of energy efficiency. They also recognize the constraints put on boards of education to finance projects. We'll go through a little PowerPoint we worked on with a consultant we're using at no cost to walk you through the process. But in very simple terms, look at your buildings, look at what energy savings you can do, primarily through lighting, HVAC controls, changing equipment. And there is savings that you can realize from that. So you're gonna see some numbers here, but don't lock in on these numbers, because this was very loosely put together. We haven't gone into the in-depth stuff. I feel comfortable with the numbers, but we don't want to broadcast these out to the public as potential. So what the program allows is you to work with approved engineering firms who you can either put out an RFP for and consider firms, or you can go through one of the co-ops and select a firm. So I went through one of the co-ops and I selected one of the firms I thought was highly rated. Asked them to come in and work with me and put this program together to see what options are available for us. So they can look at a 15 or 20-year window, say during this period with the changes we make, you can save hypothetically $400,000 a year. You can then cumulatively over that time save about $6 million. We will allow you to use that $6 million towards your buildings, and it won't affect your operating budget. In other words, your utility costs are dropped down by $400,000 a year. You're agreeing to pay that savings back to this program. You stay net zero, and then you select what you want to do. You want to replace chillers, HVAC units, windows. You can even go outside the scope of energy projects with the money. You can say we want to replace a gym floor. You know, whatever the energy savings nut that you come up with, you then decide how to use that. In our case, it's HVAC, HVAC, HVAC. One thing I will point out though, when I went through this with them, I didn't tell them the other avenues that we are exploring. So I want the board to have the ability to choose different options. As you know, I applied for ROD grants for work at Applegarth for the roof as well as the HVAC equipment there. The unofficial feedback I'm getting on ROD grants is that we should hear by September. And that if we haven't already heard, chances are a project is going to be approved, because there are districts who have gotten the thumbs down for various projects. The state has said, listen, don't put any more effort into this. When you develop your budgets, it isn't going to happen. We haven't heard back from that. Richard Riso, who's our architect, as well as John Urban, a mechanical firm I'm working with, both have other districts that they put in ROD grants for, and on several of them, they've come back and said, don't bother, don't go any further. So optimistically, looks like we're in the running. If we receive monies for the ROD grant for the HVAC stuff at Applegarth, again, hypothetical number, we're asking for $10 million, they come back and they say they'll give you $4 million. The ROD grant prohibits you from folding in other things. So you couldn't do a ROD grant and an ESIP. So some of the numbers we're looking at here are ESIP based, and you would have to extract out the Applegarth piece. So that being said, we could walk through slide one with this. So this is the company that I brought in to work with us, Josh and BJ ABM. They're a large engineering firm, have done hundreds of these across the country, have a staff of about 2,000 people, and they're approved and vetted through a DPU in the program. It's a little highlight of their experience, the organization chart. Essentially, they would work for us in developing these projects. Fell down on the left, Josh Smith is the fellow who I've had out in the district with myself, surveying the buildings with his engineer, VJ. Little video that will kind of give you a real simple overview of the program.
Now more than ever, school districts are facing greater financial challenges as a result of increasing costs and decreasing revenues, creating a lack of funding for facility improvements. In addition, the average age of a school building in the United States is 40 years old. Not only can older buildings be much more expensive to repair than newer buildings, but they may also have outdated HVAC systems, which can waste a high percentage of your total energy costs. What if you can make facility upgrades and improve your students' learning environment without a tax increase? Let's go through the process ABM's Bundled Energy Solutions program uses to fund positive changes to the learning environment. When ABM installs new energy efficient systems like HVAC equipment, lighting, and other building improvements, there's a corresponding reduction in energy consumption and maintenance requirements, which creates ABM's guaranteed budget savings. The savings are then used over time to pay for the building improvements. Since the savings are coming from a school district's existing operating budget, no tax increase is required. We're simply reallocating the guaranteed savings to pay for the improvements. School districts across the nation have received millions of dollars in capital funding for their facilities through ABM's Bundled Energy Solutions program. Let us do the same for your district. Contact your local ABM education specialist or visit us on our website for more information.
Okay, as I mentioned, this is all rooted in energy legislation in New Jersey, which allows for these improvements to be paid for with the savings. 15-year, or in our case, a 20-year combined heat and power system is what we would be looking at. Lighting is what really drives it. Lighting is a lower cost first install, but it realizes a lot of savings. LED lighting, changing from the old T8s and T12 fluorescents is really substantial savings. And again, pay it out for your operating budget. Give you an idea, this is some of the stuff that we went through the schools. Obviously, we need boiler replacements, chillers. We have residential window AC units in some schools where we would go to what's called a VRF system. We upgrade unit ventilators, our controls, building automations, variable frequency drives, lighting, as I mentioned, and some of the building envelope, which is insulation and things along those lines. You could also possibly lean into water conservation projects, window replacement, roof repair replacements, walk-in refrigerators. There are controls now that can realize some savings on those, as well as the kitchen hoods. Electrical infrastructure is a big thing that we have to look into, particularly in Applegarth due to its age. Could even dive down into solar, converting your bus fleet to electric. There are a lot of opportunities there. Our needs lean so heavy towards HVAC, though I think that's where our focus would be. Again, do not lock in on these numbers because it includes Applegarth, as I mentioned, and somewhat loosely, not a deep dive on this. But first glance, you could be looking at potential 22% savings. The energy costs could generate $6.5 million. So you could then say, okay, now the $6.5 million, next slide, please. We would start the process. The first part of the process is a local government energy audit. And you may have heard of the Board of Public Utilities, but that is an independent board that oversees all of the utilities from Comcast, gas, electric, et cetera. They're the regulatory agency that ensures that those agencies work properly. So everything in this process is overseen by BPU. BPU, through this legislation, has appointed a company, TRC Energy, and they would come in and do the local government energy audit. I'm being told that there is an 18-month lead time, though, in order to get those audits done. The option you have, though, is to do that audit independently. So you hire an independent engineering firm to come in and do that. I guess you might be looking at about somewhere in the $40,000 range to have that done. You then take that energy audit and you work with one of these companies. Again, ABM is just one that I selected. You could decide to go with them. You could issue an RFP. You could select somebody else from the list. It's open to whatever the board desires. TIPS procurement, that is one of the co-ops that we work through, and several of these agencies like ABM are approved through TIPS. So it allows you to kind of bypass the process should you want to. You can go to TIPS and you can say, okay, I have the 7 approved vendors in TIPS. We'd like to either hear from 1, 2, or 3, or just select ABM or XYZ, whoever you want to go with. Then you start the process. We'll do a more in-depth dive on that, and they'll come back and say, instead of 6.5 million, maybe it's 8.2 million, or maybe because you took Applegarth out of here, it's down to $5.2 million. Okay, Monroe, what do you want to do with that $5.2 million? And those are what we call the project workshops. And that's where we choose what is top priority for us. We can say, okay, the rooftop unit at Mill Lake, the chiller at Barclay Brook, this item, that item, and we come up with whatever amount we can. The other opportunity to expand this, though, if you want to take kind of a deeper dive and get more done, is the board has the ability to contribute to this. So, as you know, over the past, I'd say at least decade, we've been allocating about $1.2 to $2 million a year for capital, whether it be roofs at a school, boilers at a school. As I've mentioned in the past, what really disrupted the process is the growth in the town. So several years where we should have been doing a chiller or a roof or so on, we did stopgap projects, and we got away from that process. So we know that historically you've been allocating somewhere in that range for capital. If you are going to commit to say that is kind of the pattern that we've always followed, we're going to commit to $1.5 million, $1.2 million, whatever you want to come up with, you can contribute that to this as well, and then that gets factored in. If you want to contribute, say, okay, annually we commit to contributing $1 million to capital for this program. You then get 15 or 20 years worth of that right out of the gates. You could jump then to $15 or $20 million worth of work in the district in one fell swoop and have your net savings take care of the cost for you, with the exception of the million that you're contributing. So you do your project workshop, you decide on what you want to go with. Again, not limited to HVAC projects. You can put windows, floors, doors, anything you want in there. Then you have to submit the energy savings plan that you come up with to a third party. And this is the piece that I like about this. So the Board of Public Utilities is the outside regulatory agency that's saying, okay, ABM or XYZ or whoever you've chosen, we're going to go through all of their calculations, all of their proposals and everything, and validate either up, down, or agree to what they have proposed. It then gets authorized. And from that standpoint, ABM is the financing agency. They step in and say, okay, we're running with the project. Monroe has selected $10 million worth of chillers, rooftop units, et cetera, and I think it's running. So it affords you the opportunity to address some of these big infrastructure things in one fell swoop, rather than trying to chip away at them, which we know because of the growth has become more and more challenging, and we're kind of behind the eight ball. So this is something I wanted to throw out there for the committee to consider.
Are there any districts around us that have had experience here and
Yes,
had successful programs?
and a good point about that. So there are two ways this program is offered. One is they go through and they say, okay, we're gonna get you $400,000 a year in savings, and you move ahead with the project. I've heard through some colleagues that some of these companies don't always hit their mark, and that can really cause a problem with your operating budget. If you're counting on 400,000 in savings and it doesn't come through, you're stuck. The other piece of this is you can basically say, we want it guaranteed. You pay a bit of a premium for that, but they're guaranteeing that. So if they guaranteed you $450,000 a year in energy savings, and you're only netting 370, they then have to step in and write you a check for the 80,000. I would think that would be the more comfortable way to go. Pay that surcharge to get your guarantee in there. But if it's something you want to go ahead with, consider some other firms, consider the process. What I would suggest maybe is if you want to invite in this firm or 2 or 3 firms, maybe to come to a public board meeting or to another BGT meeting and let them kind of dive deeper and kind of guide you on some of this as well.
Can we know for sure about that 18-month waiting period, if that's true?
That's something I will definitely look into, yes.
Well, I think no matter the direction we take, we should have them come in and explain this process. Take the time to listen.
Absolutely.
And again, the board will have a decision to make regarding the RAD grants if they come through. Again, hypothetically, 10 million, the state says we'll give you 4 million. Coming up with the 6 million or a part of it. Maybe it's more advantageous to turn down the RAD grant and go through this. I don't know. That's something that,
Well, we could break up just have that, the RAD grant was just for the apple bar
right.
piece, right?
Mhm,
So if we have other means, even wait for the RAD grant, see what we get there.
right.
And we would know about the route grant by September.
That's what they're telling us now.
And you said this initial audit, which we are probably going to hire somebody on the outside to, it wouldn't still be by September, right? We wouldn't be that far
No.
out in this process. We would already know where we stand with the rock grant.
Right.
So we can focus this project on, I don't see why we would not do it. That's my question, like, can somebody poke a hole in this? Like,
Well, I
what
think
could we-
that the next move we should do is have ABM come in and explain in detail. I'm sure Mr. Tate did an excellent job, but it's nice to hear from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely. I wanted to get your comfort level first before I just brought in and.
Yeah, I think we should do it as soon as possible, actually.
And they've done work in New Jersey in school districts?
Yes.
Can I ask, is this similar to, so I as a homeowner just went through this personally where I have to say this was some sort of a New Jersey energy program. Every single thing in my house, including the insulation,
Mhm.
everything. And I only pay a monthly little bit, which is exactly like this plan where I'm having that saving and I'm pretty much just paying that. So whatever, $30,000 worth of equipment replacement, but I'm only paying a monthly, which is close to the savings because of the efficiency improvement in the house. And they're encouraging a lot of homeowners to do this. So there's
So we went down that path. Those are
We
grants,
did, I
yes,
remember
it was the
that.
direct install program. They've reneged on that.
Oh,
What they're telling me now is that they're changing, although nothing official, the parameters of the program. So it comes down to kilowatt usage on a building. So smaller buildings it works for. Here they said, remember, we weren't gonna do the high school, we weren't gonna do the middle school because the usage was too much. Spent an enormous amount of time with this company. We even signed agreements with them, we're headed down this path, and now they said no. How do you know that? I filed a legal complaint with Board of Public Utilities for what they've done. I feel they pulled the rug out from under us, and I don't know what will ever come of that. Maybe they'll just get a slap on the wrist or whatever. But I've heard from utility representatives that the program is changing. It's been so successful that they're now going to expand it to a 300 kilowatt range. If that's the case, then our buildings kind of fall back into it. So if that comes up in the meantime, while you're exploring this too, then you can look at that option as well. But you recall with some of those, the board, it was not a complete net zero on those. So there were some monthly costs we had in those. There were savings, but it wasn't net zero. So it was an additional $600 a month at one school and an additional $132 at another
Yes,
school.
you're right.
Yeah.
It sounded like a very nominal amount, but you're right. This is a net zero if we go with the guaranteed
Yes.
sign off the return.
And this again allows you to do a bigger swath. Should you decide to commit your annual budget capital line item of X towards this, it then opens up the opportunity for you to do it all at once rather than just chip away year after year. And the savings are substantial that can come from this. So the other piece to it is the longer you wait, every month we don't do something is another month that we're paying higher utility bills.
Absolutely.
So we really can't make a decision with this until we know what.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of pieces to this. And there's no cost to kind of walking down the path with ABM or XYZ or whoever you want to with this. Again, I have no allegiance to them. I just thought that they
Right.
came across as.
And you said there's also another company that does this.
There's several.
So we
There's
should
a-
have at least two come here. I think we should.
ABM and one more, yeah.
Sure.
Do you want to do that at the committee level first before you go to the board or?
I think the entire board should be present during that presentation. Not just this committee.
So a public board meeting or? It'll be
No,
repeated to
that-
the public?
I don't think at a regular board meeting. Because they're gonna need, you know, more.
Do you want to do it in committee and then if we as a committee decide which one we want to.
They come again.
That's what I
Then they
I
will
would
come
do.
again and do it to the full
So we
board.
could do both.
I would have two come in at a committee meeting and then bring
One to
one to the public.
The one the committee picks it.
yeah, and then have them do that presentation again for the full board and the public.
And by that time, you might have the right.
Right.
Okay. We'll continue to push that.
All right, any other questions?
Well, thank you
Five on
very
the,
much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Number 5, soundstage and lighting professionals.
Yes, so, hands up. We just still want to pass them along. So by way of the Finance Committee, I was asked to look into concerns regarding the cost of Reed Sound. As you may know, Reed Sound provides the sound and lighting for our theater operations. And I've also approached during the year by community members as well as the Mighty Oaks, who also expressed concern regarding the cost involved. So I'll kind of read back a partial overview of the situation. We opened the Marasco PAC in the mid-90s. It was the first true performing arts center we had in the district with professional sound and lighting systems. The school AV coordinator and drama staff attempted to manage the equipment, but it quickly proved to be too overwhelming. We explored options for a stipend position to the drama directors or others to perform such functions, but there were no takers. They were really just too busy with handling the students and the programs. So to accommodate the need, we contracted with a firm named Backstage Lighting and Rigging. They happened to have been the subcontractor who would perform the installation of the stage rigging, sound, and lighting equipment at the PAC. Backstage Lighting and Rigging later became New Jersey Theatrical. These firms provided reliable professional stage and theater service for the school and community events at the Marasco PAC from the early 90s through September of 2021, after the untimely passing of its owner, Michael Emilio. The firm, Backstage Lighting, New Jersey Theatrical, was dissolved at this time. Their main employee, who many of you may know or recognize, was Gary Fonseca, who worked with us for over 20 years. He was a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE Local Union Number 21, which serves Middlesex County. We contacted him at the time to see if he wanted to provide those services directly for us rather than through the company. He was at a stage in his life where he said he just wasn't willing to kind of make that move. He just wanted to finish out his career working at the union. It's important to also note that in 2011, when we opened this theater, we assumed we would have backstage lighting handle this as well for functions and so on. This is a highly complex system here, and quickly proved that it was a little beyond their reach in terms of the sound and lighting equipment. At that point, we engaged in a search, found Reed Sound. Reed Sound has been serving us for over a decade now, and very professional, first rate all the way. The board has an investment of hundreds of thousands of dollars in sound and lighting equipment in that auditorium, and they have done a fabulous job of maintaining that for us and keeping it live and community performances and the like. As for addressing what some believe to be high cost in Reed Sound, I shared these concerns with Darren Sussman, he's the president, and he presented his rates for 23-24, and he said, these are my labor rates. He also uses union employees, and he said he would work with the district for school functions. In other words, if we have a play, he would cut down on some of the minimums and so on, but he said he could not afford to do that for other activities. I encouraged the board at the June meeting to re-engage Reed. Doesn't mean we're locked in with them, but to re-engage them because about a year and a half ago, I took over use of buildings. So I handle all of the operations for that. We have events scheduled 6 to 9 months from now. We already have Reed booked for. So if we had not appointed them, they're already booked with outside groups to provide the service. So we needed to get them appointed. But I also wanted to continue, as the committee had requested, to look for other options. So I talked first with the Mighty Oaks to see if they recommended anybody, because they were very vocal about that it was too much and there were better people out there. And they came back and they said, we were wrong. Reed is the person to go with. We just wish they would be a little cheaper in their rates.
They're back to Reed.
So they did research and they came back.
So maybe.
I then reached out to the New Jersey Theater Alliance. I figured if anybody's going to know somebody, they would. They got back to me and they said, Reed Sound. And then they said, put me in touch with McCarter Theater over Princeton University, a gentleman by the name of Steve Howe. And they said, Steve and some of his employees might want to do this for you, moonlight type thing. Talked to Steve Howe, he was very accommodating, but basically said, no, we're busy enough with our productions. Hey, we use Reed Sound, why don't you use them? They recommended another firm who I reached out to, Hayden, reached out to several times, and they've not been responsive, so I'm not going to chase them. I gave them what we were looking for, and they haven't. I then found, I went back to the local union number 21, spoke to the business agent there and said, hey, this is who we used to work with, backstage lighting, Mike Emilio. Oh, yes, we know of you guys. Really proud that we've served you all these years. And I said, who else do you have out there? And they said, there's another company, Silverback Productions. So I brought Silverback in, 2 owners. We toured the facilities. I gave them all the information on our systems and so on, checked their references, and you have before you their rate schedule. You can see the rates are fairly comparable. Some of the areas where Reed is more expensive is Reed has added a $400 administrative fee to events. And their rationale behind that, and I got to tell you, I support them on this, is the amount of work that goes into getting a contract and a proposal to one of these outside groups that wants to use our facilities. We sometimes go through 9, 10 or more iterations of the group will come in, we arrange a tour for them, we talk with their production people about what they want, and they start out with they want the world. Reed gives them a very detailed proposal of all those things. Oh, that's too much. How about if we change this? How about if we change it? And it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And from Reed's perspective, they said, we need to recoup those costs. This is getting to be too overwhelming for us. So there's that charge on there, which I know some board members cited as being a concern. I have not asked Mr. Sussman, but I believe that they would waive that probably for our fees because we don't go through that with them for our functions. Reed also has a 10-hour minimum on here, where the other group has an 8-hour minimum. So the question is, do you want to co-approve Silverback and give the opportunity for both firms to provide proposals to groups? Do you want to end the relationship with Reed? Or do we want to, my suggestion would be to move into this slowly with Silverback. My concern with Silverback is that they are more stage rigging people and they are not true engineers as Reed Sound is. When I took them through both theaters, what I noticed, they immediately, oh, coupling 812, rigging component this, that, the other. I took them over to the lighting boards, and it was no question. When you bring a sound engineer in front of a sound and lighting board, they're computer geeks, they immediately jump into what the components are. So I'm a little concerned that Silverback might not be able to handle the magnitude of that system, or might compromise it in some way.
I think you should get all the manuals for that equipment and Mr. Snyder could get it to work.
Well, is there,
Magic wand.
have we reached out internally? Is there any opportunity to make it a stipend position within the district?
So it is, and that's one of the reasons Mr. Snyder is here. So again, at the middle school, we never did that. Over here at the high school, it is a stipend position. And so they handle all the school-based functions. One of the questions was raised recently. There was a rather large bill on there that someone from the board thought was rather excessive for Reed to charge for the event. It turns out it wasn't for labor for the event because our staff did labor. It was for equipment. For the Mean Girls production, they wanted a host of wireless microphones and specialty equipment, and it was simply a rental charge for all of that equipment. Our staff did the other piece. So Mr. Slater can elaborate on.
Yeah, so we've been working with Reed Sound, as you mentioned, for quite a while. Now, coming from just starting this role last week and coming from being one of the band directors and instrument specialists, I'm familiar with all the concerts that goes on both here at the high school and at the middle school. Speaking specifically to the middle school, we do host a majority of our district concerts over there, including all the elementary concerts for band and chorus, our plays, and as well as obviously the middle school concerts. A thought that I had come up with, and this is not to say that one concert from one school is any bigger or more important by any means than another, but it's just different in size, meaning a musical is going to be a much bigger production than an elementary band and chorus concert. So at the middle school right now, with all the events that we're hosting, I can really think of 3 large-scale concerts that we do. One of them being the musical, both musicals, the 6th grade musical and the 7th and 8th grade musical. The amount of wireless mics and sound setup is really, you do need a professional in there for that. So another concert that we host is the MTMS Jazz and Percussion Concert, which I'm very familiar with because the amount of microphones that the jazz band requires for soloists and there's 3 of them. So they're at different, they're located at different spaces a lot of the times for where the soloists are. So that's a concert that we need someone like Reed or one of these companies, and also the choir concerts over there because of the large choir and where the directors would like the mics. My feeling is some of the other concerts, we may not need a Reed Sound or any of these companies to do, and that we could try to look into handling this more in-house. Now, I know you mentioned years ago, we had looked at maybe a stipend position for someone in-house and there were no takers. I think we might want to revisit that because I think we may have some takers now as we've progressed through the years over there. And even if we looked at a stipend or even just an hourly concert rate, a majority of these concerts do not last more than 2 hours. So to have to pay Reed Sound for a 10-hour minimum for a 2-hour elementary concert, I think we can start handling that more in-house with that and look into if there's first anyone interested in it, as I mentioned to Dr. Lehman. And if there is not, maybe we could look at maybe possibly training some in-house people to do that for a stipend position. And I think that would save the district a lot of money on these events. So I think there are some events, like I said, one not bigger or better than the other. All of our events are amazing and equally as important, but just size and magnitude as far as sound and microphones and placement and all that would require this, where we should look into something else for our smaller in size performances through the district. Now, up here at the high school, I know there is a stipend position right now, which runs for the many concerts that I do both here and just through the years. I will tell you, I work with Mr. Loddick directly. His interns are amazing what some of these students do. They have been just fantastic. So we do have them at our disposal as well for some of those events up here, the not as big scale musical productions up there. The students have just been, what he's taught them has been incredible. And what they've learned from not just Mr. Loddick, but from all of their teachers has been incredible. So we do have that as a resource, but as you mentioned, the systems are very complex at both places. So you really do need someone who's well-trained and versed and know what they're, know what they're doing for that. So I do think we have a lot of options with this, but, it's a conversation that should be ongoing. I started the dialogue with Dr. Lehman this week, so it's an ongoing thing. I believe.
That would be more for our in-house productions. I was under the impression that a lot of angst was coming from the facilities use customers and wanting to either have an option or make sure the negotiations succeed or that they're fair, that they're not like monopolizing.
It was the
genre
Mighty
idea.
Oaks were the main.
It was, but then like Mr. Tank said, I was signing checks and it caught my eye. It was $860 for microphones.
Well, facilities.
What is this?
The
So
facilities
we're
usually
using
cover
them
this
as
bill.
well, and I understand if we don't have those type of microphones, maybe we need to have somebody come in for that, but if we're using Resound for our performances that we can do internally, I mean, we are being charged the same amount than the outside. And if we could provide outside customers with the option of you only need, because I think the concern that a couple of the members of the public brought up in public comment was they're not using such elaborate services, but their performances aren't 10 hours long, but they're being held to that 10 hours. So if we could provide them with a service through an in-house service that they pay, they would pay the amount for that stipend position, whatever that hourly rate is. It would be much cheaper than Resound. It would be another option.
Of those where there's no jeopardy to the equipment because the production is such that it facilitates the training
Right.
that we have in the.
I think it would have to be a building use decision at the time of putting it in of what do you need? Do you need, this, or that, like, check
You need it, you gotta pay for it.
Right.
So if somebody's using our buildings from outside the school district, they foot this bill
Yes.
As do we.
with our in-house stuff.
But this would be competitive to any other facility they could consider.
Right.
These technology resources, we assume, would carry over if they use East Brunswick facility or South Brunswick's facility.
This theater is far and above any other place in the state. It's much simpler, not simple, but simpler system across the way.
I can vouch for that. I've done variety shows where I could handle sound and light myself out there, but here you get lost. And that's another reason why we don't want to put it in the hands of anybody. Interns trained by Mr. Fladdick, yes, they won't damage it, but, but if we don't trust, we want to bring in engineers and not allow,
Oh, absolutely.
for sure, not allowing.
There is one component, though, that is afforded to any groups coming in, because as you know, over the years, there's some really high-level performers that have done this way. So there's, performers, Harry Belafonte Jr. was here one time. So those groups all the time have their own equipment with them. This is what's known as a roadshow connect. So a performer like that brings in his own lighting board, his own sounding board, and it connects to our system, and then he runs his own stuff, and we don't even really need to have anybody here for those type of events. Those are few and far between, but.
Another thought I had, Mr. Tague, is, so this pack, Montgomery actually almost has a identical one to us. I'm wondering, I know the supervisor there, I can reach out and see what they're doing for this and what they're using, because it's almost they're identical, and other comparable districts. I'd like to reach out and just see, because that might be an option that we haven't even explored yet, that some other districts might be using, and they're still in our region right here, and like I said, it's almost an identical situation there, so I will make some phone
The same
calls.
architect designed, this is designed in Montgomery.
Correct,
In
correct.
South Brunswick.
Correct.
So Mighty Oaks actually contacted South Brunswick to see, and they found out they're using Reed Sound.
Reed Sound,
they're using
okay.
it Students, and one nice thing about Reed Sound that they do is they have a scholarship program for students who are in the sound and lighting
Right,
venue.
right.
And some of our students in the past actually gotten a scholarship. I forget the name of the college, it's somewhere down in North Carolina. One of the stagehands we worked with.
So underlying here, it sounds like the ask still is that the committee bubble this up, that we be an eligible contract. So that if we
So
get-
REIT has been approved for 23-24,
we did that.
and they are currently under
Okay,
contract with certain, with certain groups that are already booked for upcoming events. We already have the arrangement with them. It's just new people coming in. Does the board want to do a professional appointment also for Silverback? And if so,
Yeah,
You
your
want them to go
initial
for one?
hesitation is they didn't seem so confident with the sounding.
there's only one way to find out. I would suggest though, if we're gonna find out, we don't do it with one of our events.
Would it be, so if we put this up for an approval to have that as well, would it be in your office then with building use that you would determine which one based on the needs that you would assign, or would
For
the,
outside groups, we would offer both. We could say, XYZ's dance studio is coming in to do a performance. We can say, here are 2 approved vendors that you're welcome to use. You have to use one of them, and then let them select.
Did you say Mr. Gary Fonseca has worked for Silverback Production or no?
No, he worked for neither, for a company that's no
No,
longer, but he's out of the theater workers local where these people also.
And do we have any referrals for this vendor? Like, do we know how good they are as compared to REIT?
I checked some of their online stuff, and again, they were not referred by the Theater Alliance or by
So
McCarter Theater.
my
There's
thought
not a
is
lot
that,
of firms out there.
right, my thought is that, and I know, I don't believe this is on the, on board docs attachment for all the board members to see, so if we could put this up
Sure.
for other board members to see in the BGT agenda, I'm not comfortable bringing on another vendor, because there's not much of a saving here.
No, 20% on
Is
that
there?
minimum hours alone.
But then if you look at their rates, they seem to range a lot, and they've split it up into different specialities, and they haven't. So when I'm looking at it, it looks like we might not come up, there might not be too much of a difference.
It's the nut of the minimum hours, that's
So
20%.
I'm not against approving them, I'm against the idea of giving that choice to whoever's renting our property, not knowing, like we keep saying, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. They have handled it for years, and yes, they're slightly expensive compared to them, but I don't know, do we want to allow somebody, an outsider, to choose which one to use?
well, we would be saying, we trust both of these companies.
That's what we would be
equally.
saying if we approve this
Yeah.
contract, right? And
And
that's
then
what
you
my whole back.
decide what your needs are based on these prices. Do you want to pay, a lighting assistant
10-hour minimum for
$65 an hour for a minimum of 10 hours? Or do you want to pay, I don't know if it has lighting on here, they have
Yeah, the
stagehand.
rate of,
Stagehand
Yeah,
with
it's very
sound is
different, yeah.
$65 an hour for 10 hours, where stagehand is $55 an hour with 8 hours. So it is a significant
Thing.
savings for but we have to say as a board
that
that we are
approve them both,
comfortable with
both.
both of them, and that's the vote,
That's-
not who gets to pick which, because we would be saying,
Right.
we're
Are
equally
we
comfortable.
comfortable, right? Are we
And that
comfortable
would be
with
the discussion if we want to move it forward.
So I would go do my own research too, but I guess the rest of the board should also see this document.
Well, I think we have to also, if Mr. Tague is comfortable, are you
Yes,
comfortable
are you
with?
comfortable?
If you're not comfortable, tell us, and we'll go with your recommendation.
Sound
If you think that it's not,
I
if
just,
you're not comfortable bringing them in, and that's something something can, like,
we have to consider.
because all I
Exactly.
said, that, you're not comfortable with them having access to our equipment and providing the service and knowledge of our equipment, then
We shouldn't go any further with this. That's true. You're right, Chrissy.
I can't say anything bad about them. I can only say good things about Reed Sound. For over a decade now, it's been flawless. And the high-end performers that have come through here, I've always gotten emails after the fact that say, wow, they were exceptional, those kind of things. We've never had a complaint about the quality, the engineering level of their staff, the understanding of the complex equipment.
So other than the Mighty Oak, have you gotten a lot of pushback on having people who are signing up for or looking to rent our facilities push back on the price of that? And do you think that we're losing opportunities to have performances here because of?
No, I don't think anybody leaves us because of cost, because comparable to other areas around us, you've got good rates out there.
Okay.
And your theater trumps what is out there otherwise. So I don't think you're losing people, but it's the natural process with people when they come in, they say, I want this, I want this, and then you tell them what it's gonna cost, you know? And then it's kind of like, okay, and it's just a normal process with everybody. We rarely get people who don't ask, hey, can we reduce this or that? But I can't tell you of any complaints that I've gotten in terms of this didn't work or that didn't work. And when, you know, the few times we've had things that might have been borderline, when you walk back through it technically, you see that read sound was spot on, that, you know, the person brought music that was not in the format that was put in the contract, those kind of things. But again, I don't think you can go wrong with giving Silverback a try.
I feel comfortable.
Well, if it's not costing the district money because we're basically getting that in fees for the performance, I think we should just leave it alone. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. That's my opinion. Anybody else have any questions?
Just a side note for the microphone, for in-house productions and stuff, maybe we could save by buying them, investing money, and is that possible? Like, is it?
It is, but we've talked with the drama people in the past. So wireless mics are very delicate
Keep
device
breaking
that
and-
has to be calibrated. So every time they come in, they're setting up wireless receivers and those kind of things. And we looked at it in years past, okay, it would cost us many $1,000s, even though the rentals are expensive. And all the drama people I've talked to have said, you don't want to touch those things. They're too delicate, they're too temperamental. You needed, you know, that type of staff to work them. So.
When we do host in-school events, when you use the, just a point to consider, when we do hire a stipended position to cover those events, there are, in some occasions, there are events that take place during the school day, which has created complications with class coverage when that is a stipended position. As such, the high school now splits that position 50-50 amongst two individuals. That's just something to consider. The other thing is when we do decide to not utilize a third party for lighting and sound, the middle school does own some mics, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
cables
we do,
and stuff. So
we do,
like,
yeah.
even when we don't need to solicit the services of a company like Reed, the middle school does own assets to where we can do like things like a DARE assembly or a lead assembly. You know, your basic school events, we don't need to call them for that. We do own the basic stuff to get us through. But like Mr. Take said, with the chorus concerts, the wireless mics, we probably would never even want to own them because they're the costs are very, the upfront costs are very costly and they are so delicate that
Will be constantly.
the value of them and the quality of them probably appreciates more expeditiously than normal.
And to your point, Mr. Morel, that if we do go the route of possibly a stipend position for this and do it in-house at the middle school, that stipend position would not oversee teaching responsibilities.
Yeah, and that
during
was
the
a lot
day.
of us splitting.
So that
years
will,
ago.
the teaching will obviously come first. The good part is the majority of the events during the day, like an assembly or there, it's usually, I would say, over 90% of the time, a matter of whoever had that stipend position could set up the tech probably the night before or in the morning, and it's there for them, because usually it's just a matter of a couple microphones here and there. So it could be set up in advance, and it wouldn't even affect that. It would just be pre-set up. Now, that's not everything, but I would say a majority at least. But the teaching duties of that staff member would obviously come first before this position.
Yes, sir.
And it's important to know too, the Mighty Oaks uses the facility for free and only has to pay for
It's,
retail.
Okay,
So then do not put Silverback for approval. Is that 1 year?
I don't think so. I mean, we could take a straw poll now. I say no.
If we're not losing customers and there's not been outcry for the monopolization of read in this, then I would say let it fly. My impression from one of the board members was that there was this outcry, so I know that's why we were entertaining the conversation and
And
discussion.
that's why initially, like I said, I went to them first and said, tell me who you want. Give me a list of who you want. And then they came back and Nancy Mitrosek is a former employee here. She's now instrumental in that group. And she came back and she said, I called the other districts and everything.
And now when Reed sees this, I can elevate the prices even more
Yeah.
because now they know.
And without that part of the video. And this is, in defense of Reed, not to defend Reed, but we've looked at this in the past because, even in some instances, we would go back and like, right, the control room.
Oh, sure.
You know, what do you know, we don't need you guys. So like, but then it would be, you know, for some of our other events, and then there were.
There was actually one
instances-
concert, Mr. Morale, that ran sound. I said, don't do that, get it.
Yeah, no, well, then they wanted to call Reed after that. But then they, but yeah, there are definitely, like Mr. Snyder said, I think there's definitely ways we could probably, just based on what we've seen over the years.
Yeah.
Certain events.
Sure.
Not needed, but other events, without 100%, I wouldn't have any of our kids or
100%.
staff touch that equipment.
And then just
The other
speaking
thing-
at the middle school, the three that I mentioned, really the musicals, the jazz percussion, and the choir concerts, I think are.
Right, and then some of the
So-
things that we just can't do, like Reed will get up there and they'll move tilt lights.
Right.
And I don't know if we would be able to train a staff member to do things like that, because then you'd have to train them to become a cherry picker, right, and things like that. And so those are some of the services that, when we can't do those types of things, that's when.
Right, right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.